Thanks to the internet, it's never been easier to tell a story or create an urban myth and it actually end up gaining so much attention that it goes crazy viral. And one of the most infamous internet-born legends is the Slender Man. Slender Man, a faceless, elongated figure in a black suit who is said to stalk, manipulate and abduct small children. Slender Man himself is like the modern day bogeyman. He is essentially what children are looking under their beds for and in their wardrobes. And with me saying that, the story and the character in itself has had quite the impact on young teens and young children throughout its creation. In this video, we're going to have a look at the origin of Slender Man and his influence on internet culture. We're also going to have a quick look at the psychological effects that Slender Man has actually had on children, because believe it or not, this story is a little bit wild. And not only that, there was some pretty tragic consequences that have come from the creation of Slender Man. So without further ado, sit back and I'll just get straight into today's video topic. So first of all, if you've lived under a rock for like the past, 15, 16 years and you have no idea who Slender Man is, don't worry because I'm going to explain what it is. Slender Man was first created on the 10th of June back in 2009 on the Something Awful forums. And Slender Man was actually created as part of a contest to create the most scary paranormal image. And a man named Eric Knudsen ended up submitting these two photos of like a creepy, eerie black and white freaky photograph. Here they are. As you can see, these images show a dark, tall, black suited, faceless figure lurking around young children. All of these photos would then be like accompanied with a little story to go along with it, basically saying that all of the children in the photo basically ended up disappearing. All of them under mysterious circumstances and have never been seen since. Now, I don't feel like I need to say this, but Slender Man is not real. It's just a myth. It's just another urban legend. But because of the freaky and like eerie nature of Slender Man, for 2009, this was a pretty unique concept. He ended up going pretty viral, and soon enough Slender Man was being talked about all over the internet. Users across platforms like 4chan, Reddit and Creepypasta Wiki began adding to the story and creating more myths and, lore about Slender Man. For example, it was then added that Slender Man had this ability to teleport and that he could control mimes and he drove his victims to insanity. Like, it ended up having a whole lore behind it, and I know a lot of bad stuff has happened because of Slender Man, but I just want to say, I think this is so clever, like how people come up with something in their head and the internet loves it so much they start making a story. Collectively, they start building on this myth. It's so cool. And I think that is the reason why the myth of Slender Man ended up thriving, and that's because it was such a collaborative effort. Anyone was able to contribute, reinterpret, make art, make videos about Slender Man, which then ended up spreading the legend to more audiences, which made it feel more organic and somewhat immersive than other traditional horror stories. There was one adapted YouTube series that uploaded to YouTube back in 2009, and this was a YouTube series named Marble Hornets. And this was like a found footage horror series that was uploaded to the internet, which had an entity that looked like Slender Man, and this character was referred to as the Operator. And this documentary-style video ended up blurring the lines of fiction and reality for some users, especially young children. And this ended up convincing some users that Slender Man might actually be real. And this ended up fueling his presence even more across social media, where fan communities shared encounters, artwork, and theories, further deepening this mystery. And as you can imagine, if there's art of it, then there's Rule 34 of it, so there you go. You're all disgusting. I must say, there are some pretty cool fan art of Slender Man. The story is great. I love creepypastas, and this is something that just, fascinates me. When Slender Man began to, gain popularity, this was around the time where other internet horror started to go viral, especially in online horror communities. So it was, he got in at the right time. And this was around about when creepypastas began to blow up too. And creepypastas are still very, very relevant in today's horror and story writing community. Everyone knows a creepypasta. For example, my favourite when I was a kid was 1999 and the Candle Cove creepypasta. If you have no idea what creepypastas are talking about, and you're probably thinking, why is my pasta boiling creepily? Creepypastas are short horror stories that, like, circulate online. They're usually presented as, like, true accounts or, like, true horror stories, and people add to their eerie appeal by, like, adding to the story. And Slender Man himself became one of the most recognisable figures in this genre, and I think he still is today. I think when you think of creepypasta, the first thing your mind thinks of is Slender Man. I know mine does, or Jeff the Killer, or The Rake. And this is because users began making their own stories about Slender Man as well. And it was then just literally 3 years later, Slender Man had gained so much popularity, which led to Slender Man, the 8 pages. Before I talk about the 8 pages, all I can think of when I say Slender Man, the 8 pages is that one iDubbbz video where he goes, "Hello, welcome back to Slender Man, the 8 pages." That's all I can think of. But anyway, if you've never had the opportunity to play Slender Man, the 8 pages, this was like Five Nights at Freddy's before Five Nights at Freddy's. It was so fun. It was such a good horror game. And essentially what you would do is you would have to go around this forest and find 8 different notes while trying to hide from Slender Man. You had a torch, it was creepy, it was eerie, and it was so fun. Shit scary too. The game had a very minimalistic yet simple and fun design that just added to it. It was easy. Anyone could play it, but man, it was scary. And this game ended up also going viral on YouTube, which was also adding to Slender Man's popularity at the time. You know, there were so many YouTubers playing it, there was songs, there was PewDiePie was playing it. I'm sure like Machinima, whatever they're called, they did a song about it. I played it so much when I was a kid, but I was so bad at it. I don't think I ever found all 8 of the pages without dying. But despite this seemingly, you know, all well and good with Slender Man growing, people were loving it, people were getting involved, this also came with its quite dangerous downsides. The more Slender Man would be discussed and shared online, the more realistic Slender Man was becoming to young viewers. Because, you know, when you're a child, you don't really understand what you're seeing, you know, you have a hard time trying to understand that things aren't real, which is why you end up looking under your bed for the monster. Like, I've talked about this before, when I was a young child, the thing that used to scare me the most was Regan from The Exorcist, and it still does. Every time I see the photo, I still get heart palps, okay, like, terrifying. But now, like, I understand it's not real, but the amount of sleepless nights I had over Regan from The Exorcist, I can't count on 2 hands. There was lots, okay, there was a lot. And when you're a young child, that fear that you have inside feels real, and you have a hard time remembering that it's not real. The virality of Slender Man had this effect where children were beginning to believe that Slender Man and other creepypastas were real. And again, this caused so many children across the globe to have so many sleepless nights. So, like I said, it's a given that Slender Man actually had a pretty huge impact on young children. So has creepypastas as well in general. I feel like in today's day and age, children despite them being a little bit more, you know, tougher when it comes to being exposed to scary stuff, which shouldn't be the case, but it is unfortunately, they are exposed to a lot more than our, let's say, parents would have been when they were younger. So it goes without saying that this, you know, it does actually affect children, because unlike traditional horror stories, which are like, you know, confined to books and movies, like horror figures and stuff like that, Slender Man was being added to, and the legend was almost interactive. And this ended up creating an illusion of authenticity that some impressionable minds struggled to separate from reality, because I'm not being funny. If people were posted like, Regan Exorcist sighting in such and such, I would believe it. I would full on believe it. Because you're a kid, how are you supposed to know people lie on the internet? You don't know that. But this is exactly what people would do. They would Photoshop Slender into, you know, anything, any kind of reality, and children that, you know, shouldn't really have unrestricted internet access would see it and think, oh my god, he's actually real. Because for many, Slender Man was just a horror character, just the same as any other horror character like Freddy Krueger, Chucky the Doll, Michael Myers. But for children that, you know, have a hard time trying to understand that, and especially children that already have existing mental health issues, he became a bit of an obsession. Children were reported experiencing nightmares, paranoia, and anxiety after consuming Slender Man content, which is still how I feel when I watch a horror movie. Psychologists have actually noted that when children and teenagers become deeply immersed in online horror culture, their fear responses can become exaggerated, leading to sleepless nights and even delusions around a character or a film or something of that nature. Okay guys, you're about to learn a new word, so don't say that Dollface has never taught you anything, because that's not true. I'm about to teach you a new word. And this word is ostension. I had no idea what it meant, so I had to Google it. Ostension is the phenomenon of where fictional stories begin to influence real life behaviours. And this ostension ended up playing a role in the belief that Slender Man was real for so many children. So, for example, ostension would be like someone covering up the mirrors because they're afraid of the Bloody Mary challenge. That would be a story affecting real life behaviours because you're covering a mirror because of something fictional. But for example, children would attempt to contact Slender Man through things such as rituals. Again, much like traditional urban legends such as the Bloody Mary challenge. And most of these interactions were relatively harmless because, you know, kids are just being kids. Like when a child plays with a Ouija board for the first time, it's not that deep, it's okay. But it was all well and good until 2014 when the creepypasta and horror community, you know, would be rocked by a pretty real incident that happened, and this was the 2014 Slender Man stabbing. And this is quite possibly one of the most disturbing consequences of online horror stories that have, you know, been influenced by a real life crime. Wait, no, the other way. This is a real disturbing case of an online horror character influencing a real life crime. Obviously it's not the only one, but this one was kind of the first one that talked about creepypastas. You know, the online world of horror had really crossed over into the real world. And this occurred on the 31st of May 2014 in Waukesha, Wisconsin, when two 12-year-old girls, Anissa Wire and Morgan Geyser, lured their friend Peyton Lutner into the woods, where they both ended up stabbing her 19 times to prove their loyalty to Slender Man. Now, I am really pleased to say that Peyton survived this attack. She's doing really well. She is such a strong woman, and I cannot say how much I admire her for being brave enough to even tell her story. But the reason that the girls did this is because they believed that committing this act would make them his servants, and they wanted to go and live with Slender in the Nicolet Forest in a mansion, which had been added to the story by other users, and the girls had read this, took this as like lore of the story, and they were fully, you know, that was their plan. They were found walking to the Nicolet Forest. And this attack ended up shocking the world. It was viral. Everyone knew about it because these girls had, 12-year-old girls, these two children had believed that Slender Man was real enough to the point where they decided they wanted to kill their own friend to prove their loyalty to a fictional horror figure. But this did end up leading to widespread discussions about, you know, the severity that these stories can have on young minds. However, it was later revealed that one of the girls in this attack, named Morgan Geyser, was actually suffering from early onset schizophrenia, which ended up contributing to her belief into Slender Man. Now, of course, she was just a child, and it does, you know, make sense, but it doesn't excuse anything that Peyton went through. But it is, you know, an explanation. This case would then go on to highlight broader issues as well in the immersive online horror culture, as not only can it impact young, but it also impacts vulnerable adults, or just individuals in general that have a hard time trying to distinguish reality from fiction, because it's not hard to find. Slender Man appears everywhere. It's on TikTok, it's on Instagram, it's even on Facebook. Do you know what I mean? It's not, you know, kept to one thing. It's almost global. Everyone knows about it. And unfortunately, we can't stop it from spreading. There's nothing we can do about it other than make people aware. Following the attack, increased awareness was brought to the role of digital literacy as well as mental health in young children and young people. Parents, educators and psychologists stressed the importance of teaching critical thinking skills to children who would then be able to distinguish fiction from reality, which, why isn't this taught in schools before this? I don't know. I'm not talking about people that are vulnerable because that's an entirely different story. Their minds, don't work the same as other people. But when it comes to young children, we should be taught from a young age, to use those critical thinking skills and come up to your own conclusion. Or just talk to people. Talk to a friended, trusted adult like I had to do to overcome my fear of Reagan from The Exorcist. Still remember the nightmares. So I get it, I get it. If Slender Man was your nightmare fuel, I get it, it's fine. Some schools would even implement lessons on media literacy, warning students about the potential dangers of online horror myths. And children nowadays are so, susceptible to this, because why are 4-year-olds playing Five Nights at Freddy's? I'll never wrap my head around that, because they are. You can say I'm lying, but trust me, they know who they know who Freddy Fazball is, But despite all of the controversy, Slender Man remains a significant figure in internet culture as a whole, not just internet horror culture, as a whole. I feel like the Slender Man creepypasta made up so many Gen Z children's childhoods, and we all turned out relatively fine. His influence expands beyond the horror community, serving as an example of how digital folklore can evolve and shape real-world beliefs. However, it's also a reminder that, despite this tale being fake, it shows the power that it holds on the minds of young and impressionable people. If you have a passion for writing horror and scary stories, you should still go ahead and do that. I suppose the consequences of what happens next isn't exactly your responsibility, but it is important for parents to know what their children are doing on the internet at pretty much all times. There are things that everyone involved can do, to prevent something like this from happening again. Because internet horror can be such a great way to express your, creativity, and that shouldn't be held back. But it's also important that the young audiences are able to develop their, critical thinking skills and analyse exactly what they consume on the internet. And that is all the time I have for this video. If you enjoyed, please let me know. And if you have any other video requests or ideas, please leave them down below in the comments. That would be greatly appreciated. And if you'd like to follow me on any other social medias, the links are down in my link tree down below. And every follower is appreciated, so thank you very much. But until the next video, stay safe.